Hey everybody, we got a fun one for you today. This is Barry at CTech-review, and we're going to do a comparison of the 2025 Ford F-150 Raptor 801A package versus a 2025 Ram 1500 RHO Level 1. This is a 2-video series. In the first video, we did an interior, exterior, technology, suspension, and powertrain overview. Today, we're gonna actually drive both these trucks. We're gonna compare suspension, ride comfort, acceleration, just general interior driving impressions, dynamics, and we're also gonna do our Ctech Mini fuel economy loop and see how both these trucks do. What better weather to do a comparison of an off-road truck in some snowy weather? So let's get into this. So we have both these trucks warmed up before we start these drive reviews to make sure that the engines, transmissions, everything is up to operating temperature so we can have a fair comparison. All right, let's first start out with the 2025 F-150 Raptor. Thankful to have heated seats and a heated steering wheel today. We've got the display in the performance view, which is a new display since 2024 in the F-150. You can see all of our temperatures are up to go. Gonna reset our fuel economy, gonna reset our instantaneous fuel economy, and let's get on the way here. We're also going to make sure we're in 2-wheel drive, and for this first part of the trip, we will put it in normal mode. You don't have an eco mode in the F-150 Raptor. We're also gonna set our climate control to 72 degrees auto. We're gonna turn off the heated seats and heated steering wheel because that's nice and warm now. Another thing to add, we've got the exhaust just in normal mode. First acceleration, one of the first things I noticed is how much more exhaust sound. I don't know how much of that sound I'm hearing inside the cabin is pumped in through the speakers. I know that was a pretty big part of the Gen 2 Raptor. I need to look and see how much of that is part of the 3rd generation Raptor, but it is a nice tone. It does not sound bad for a V6. Something worth noting, we're going 50 miles an hour down the road. Take a look at our oil pressure, 22 PSI. All right, let's get on the highway now and see how the acceleration feels. So we normally do this video at about 70 miles an hour, but I'm not really sure I want to do 70 today, just given the conditions. I kind of want to keep it around 65, 66, and we will just make the most of today's video. The conditions are not ideal, but this will also show us the capability of both these trucks. What I can say right now is I really like this steering wheel. It's very, very comfortable in the hands, soft material. Kind of bummed they got rid of the red stitch on the steering wheel. That was like one of the cool signature things on the Raptor. I think that was gone in 2024. Acceleration, 1st through 10th gear, not bad at all. It's got a really good, this one felt pretty smooth. And I know as the years go by, the 10-speed continues to get more and more smooth going down the highway. The exhaust note sounds really nice. They did a good job. I've talked about that in other videos. I think making the exhaust sound decent. You can kind of see some of these gauges going down the road as far as where we're at. You can kind of see we're actually not even making boost at 67 miles an hour. You can see the engine oil pressure, engine oil temp, trans temp, air charge temp, and battery voltage. Ford gives you a lot of the different gauges. They just give it in a little bit different format than the Ram. The seats in this are very comfortable. They seem to hold you in place side to side. Good comfort there. Nice touch points here. This is pretty soft for your elbow, and then you got upper and lower for your elbow there as well. Shifter is a lot different. It's a lot bigger, and if you want to go manual mode for paddle shifting, you hit that M and then you can use your paddle shifters. We are going to now put it in cruise because the roads have actually cleared up some. Might be hard to see in the heads-up display, but you can kind of see the information that it will show you. The heads-up information is visible through polarized sunglasses. I'm gonna compare this now to the RHO after. We'll just see how they compare. Road noise, we have the sunshade open right now. This does not have a full hands-free driving system. This has like what they call the Co-Pilot Assist 2.0 or lane centering with your hands off the steering wheel. I would not recommend anybody doing that, keep in mind, because it is not a hands-free system, whereas the Ram is a full hands-free system. It does, as you can tell, have the auto windshield wipers, as well as the Ram has, and the auto high beam. This has dual climate control, as you'd expect. And also, I wanted to mention, I forgot in the first video, it does now show your temperature for both driver and passenger in the display. Here's another change in 2025. If you notice that bar above the top of the center stack screen, there's just two buttons up there, the parking assist as well as a trail assist. But now you have this blank bar in here, which they've moved some of the buttons down below. I'm not sure if they're gonna open that up for future buttons in the top, but that is something different. In 2024, there were buttons there. We're getting off the halfway point here. So it'll be interesting to compare this truck to the RHO as far as like going around that corner right there. First impressions jumping back into a Gen 3 truck. When I mentioned in the last video that this thing rides and drives completely different than the RHO, let me expound upon that. Here's what I mean. This has a softer ride. This seems to take the small bump chatter. You don't feel as much of it feedback into the driver. But with that being said, you also get a little more body roll and a little more brake dive. This is a very comfortable cruiser going down the highway. There's no question about that. I put the RHO at more of a sport truck feel on the road. It feels like more of a muscle car, much sportier, much flatter in the corners. Acceleration, you don't get as much lift in the front end. Example, even just the steering wheel, it's a little softer material, but it also doesn't have as much, call it maybe technology in the steering wheel. It doesn't have the flat bottom down here. It's just a sportier steering wheel. These seats, the lumbar and the bolstering, as well as the seat foam, it's a little softer, just shy of about 15 miles per gallon at 70. Let's look at the RPMs. What about 1,800 RPMs, I'm thinking, approximately? How's the feedback into the driver? Feedback in the steering wheel? I'm not feeling much in the steering wheel. The steering is also set at normal mode, not comfort or not sport. This is something I like about the Raptor. You can adjust the steering feel. Brake pedal and throttle pedal, I'm not feeling any vibration or harshness through the pedals. Also notice just a standard pedal, not a brushed aluminum. Ever so slight hill here. Let's see if it pops it out of 10th gear. Absolutely not. Not a problem for the 3.5 high output. We're getting off at the highway part of the loop now. One thing I'm noticing right here, just sitting in a stoplight, I feel a tiny bit of idle vibration in my seat, just ever so slightly. It'll be interesting to see if we notice this in the Hurricane. One thing, when you start up the 3.5, it definitely has a little bit more shake at startup. The Hurricane is like one of the smoothest powertrains I've ever had as far as like vibration in the vehicle startup. It's just really smooth. We're going to pull back into Bob Maxey and let's see where we're at with our fuel economy loop. All right, just pulling in here. Let's see where we ended up being at. 14.4 miles per gallon over the 18 miles. So the RHO is 6,443 pounds curb weight. Let's compare this to the Raptor now. So the Raptor is 1,359 pounds of payload available, a GVW of 7,350. Let's figure this out. Wow, that's a big difference. So the RHO is like 500 pounds heavier than this truck. And it makes sense when I show you stuff like I'm about to show you. If we look at this skid plate here that goes underneath the gas tank, number one, look at how nice the gas tank is tucked up underneath the frame. Okay, sits really good. But that gas tank, guys, this skid plate, this is like a plastic composite material. You can kind of see some of the other skid plates underneath. Transfer case skid plate looks pretty nice, transmission above, but that is a plastic skid plate. Now, just for comparison, let's look at the RHO skid plate underneath the gas tank. They took a little different approach. Number one, it hangs down a little bit lower, but you see that gap between? That's a steel skid plate for that gas tank. And it goes all the way from the front to the rear. You got three different points that holds it. I see mixed thoughts on this. Number one, it hangs down a little lower than the Raptor, so you have less ground clearance, but you've also got like 3 inches of a crumple zone that if you got in rocks or something, and it's steel, the fact that you have a steel skid plate versus a composite, and if you did hit something hard enough, you got like 3 inches of zone to be able to absorb an impact before you hit the gas tank. I don't know. I think that's pretty decent. Now let's look at the transfer case skid plate. Pretty similar coverage there, but a little bit different style along the transmission
coverage. You can kind of see like those, it's almost like a tubular skid plate glide path. And they kind of keep that open, I think, because they're trying to keep that exhaust free right there.
All right, let's go do our drive loop now in the RHO. Kind of just see some of the different controls. This has a pretty cool little menu right here where you can kind of show multiple things at once. Fuel economy, horsepower. Check this menu out. I think this is neat. Instantaneous horsepower and torque. So we'll reset our fuel economy. I'm also going to keep this performance page open so we can kind of see oil pressures, temperatures. Just before we start, you guys can kind of see we got our coolant temp 199, oil temps, trans temp 150, and look at our oil pressures. So they're both nice and warmed up. We'll reset our fuel economy and we will begin our loop. Also, I want to make sure we got to put this not in sport mode. We want to put this in auto mode. This truck doesn't have like an eco mode or anything like that. This just has an auto mode. Here's another really cool feature in the Ram is if you use your navigation much, this thing has a maps built into the display. First acceleration, pretty similar. You're gonna notice the exhaust sound substantially quiet inside of this truck than the F-150 Raptor. The other thing you notice right away, at least for me in driving, this interior feels substantially different. All right, let's start with the steering wheel. The steering wheel in this truck is a perforated leather, then broken into a solid leather, and then flat bottom down below. You got this carbon fiber material. Ergos wise, I don't know, it's pretty similar in that regard. Pretty similar layout. I personally prefer the look of the steering wheel. I think it looks really nice. The leather feels a little firmer in your hands. I think the Raptor was a little bit softer leather. Size-wise, fairly comparable. Elbow touch points here, as well as here, pretty comparable, except you got like a little bit of a suede material. The other thing I noticed right away is when you start up the Hurricane, it's considerably smoother. I'm talking when the engine starts up, start, stop, acceleration. When you're sitting at a stoplight is the biggest thing you notice. There is like no engine vibration at all in the vehicle. It is dead in the seat. Whereas you do notice a little bit of vibration in the seat of the Raptor when you're sitting in an idle. You can kind of feel this little tiny vibration, which is surprising because the Raptor had such soft seats. I would think that that seat foam would absorb that. All right, let's get on the highway now and let's see how this compares for acceleration. Just like that, we're up to speed. Now through this section, we did about 65 to 67 mile per hour with the Raptor, and we're gonna do the same thing until we switch to 70 in the same spot as cruise control with the Raptor. Here's the gauges going down the road. You can see we're at 21 PSI. I'm pretty sure that was, I think the Raptor might've been at 22 PSI. Kind of see the different temperatures, intake temps. I'm really curious about the intake temps on the engine in the summertime at the dunes because this is a water over air intercooler, whereas the F-150 Raptor is an air over air. I think this might be a little more efficient in the dunes than the F-150 Raptor because being air over water, you can remove more heat out of the charge air before it gets into turbos. Same spot, we're gonna put it to 70 cruise, and there we go. And this is what hands-free driving looks like, guys. How cool is this? I just love this feature. You know, Ford was originally going to come out with this in the Raptor, in the Gen 3 Raptor. My truck, my 21 Raptor, had the sensors here and there to read your eyes. Ram puts it in the middle. It would have been a great feature to have for people like myself that spend a lot of time on the highway. Personally, I really appreciate this. It's worked great. I got 1,200 plus miles of using this hands-free driving so far, and it's been amazing. Going around corners. The other thing I've noticed is the adaptive cruise control in the Ram is a little bit more aggressive, which I personally like. The Ram will let you get a little closer to the car in front of you before it starts cutting speed, whereas the Ford, it's less aggressive. It starts throttling back further. Now, you notice the oil pressure went up? Pretty similar. I noticed the Ford was about 35 to 45 PSI. Most of the time, it was dependent on boost in the engine. Speaking of boost, here we are, 1 PSI, 70 mile an hour going down the road. Look at the intake temps, air, fuel, engine power. You can see 235 foot-pound of torque and 88 horsepower going down the road. Now watch, we're gonna get into the boost a little bit here. We're going up an incline. We're gonna start seeing this going up. Watch our boost going up, 5 PSI. 300 pound-feet of torque, still holding 8th gear. Now, we're gonna open up this vent, the shade above, just to kind of compare sound. It stops at the halfway point just like the Ford. Similar amount of road noise. Here, check this out. Hands-free, lane changing. How freaking cool is that? I love it. All right, we're getting off the halfway point now. I didn't bring my decibel meter today for doing readings, but I wanted to be real careful about giving that data because I'm not a big fan of decibel meters. And even though I do this for the channel, I don't rely on that information because there's a lot of inaccuracy in when you do your testing. If you hold the decibel meter reading here versus here or back here or in the wrong position just a little bit, you could see a few decibel meters difference, and those differences could mean a lot to somebody, and I can't control it as much. I don't have a controlled environment, and most people on YouTube doing reviews with decibel meter readings in automobiles don't have a standardized test for measuring decibels. But I did want to compare the handling going around this corner. Substantially different between these two trucks. Here's what I mean. The Ram has noticeably less body roll and a wallowy feeling. This feels much more like a sports car going around the corner there, whereas the Ford felt a little more, you'd feel a little more body roll. But in full fairness, I think the Ford has got a little softer ride. The seats are a little more compliant, and the suspension feels a little more compliant. Everything feels a little softer in the Raptor. Steering wheel's a little softer. Seat is a little softer. Ride is a little softer. This feels more like a sport truck, whereas the Ford feels more like maybe an off-road truck. It's hard to say because I need to get this off-road to then give this an accurate assessment of what I think about the off-road performance versus the Raptor. But on-road, if you're not used to an off-road truck and you're used to cars or muscle cars, I think you're actually gonna like the RHO a little bit more. But if you're used to a bigger, more wallowy suspension, you might like the Raptor a little bit more on-road. Transmission comparison. You notice the 10-speed transmission shifts more than the 8-speed. You can just, there's 2 more gears, so you would expect that. I also think that it's not as smooth as the 8-speed in the Ram. Both of the transmissions under like harder acceleration feel very good, very responsive, but just for average shifting, I'd give the slight nod for smoothness to the ZF transmission in the Ram. Fuel economy, 70 miles an hour, exact same spot, about 13, 14. Weren't drafting off anybody. Okay, we're gonna go up a slight grade right here. Curious if this thing has to shift out of gear. Nope, made it to the top, never shifted out of 8th gear. Let's look at RPMs at 70 miles an hour. Say about 1,800, 1,900 RPMs. So I would say the extra 2 gears help for RPMs on the highway because this looks to be about 100, 200 RPMs higher on the highway than the Ford 10-speed in the Raptor. All right, we're gonna finish up our highway portion of the drive loop now. All right, let's pull back in and let's see what we got for fuel economy on this loop with the 2025 Ram RHO. All right, let's pull in here and let's see what we got. Over the 18-mile loop, we got 12.9 miles per gallon. All right, let's see how the Raptor compares in sport mode for driving. And we will put this in Ford Auto as well, just for comparison of the video. And I'm curious to see how the performance is on this versus the RHO in sport mode. We're not gonna get on it too hard, but we at least wanna see under moderate acceleration how they feel and how they sound. Exhaust sounds nice. Really got to about maybe 3,500 RPMs, nothing too crazy. All right, let's see how this feels now. Not bad. So the transmission, definitely with the 2 extra gears, you can feel there's more shifting going on with the 10-speed versus the 8-speed. In sport mode, I know Ford uses a lot of algorithm and logic in trying to figure out your best shifting for your behaviors. I don't think it's as smooth as the ZF 8-speed behind the Ram, but both of these transmissions are extremely smooth, especially at wide open throttle. I feel that's where they like just bang through the gears really nicely. Now we're going to put this thing in sport mode, and let's see how this thing compares for a little acceleration versus the Raptor. I'll be curious to see how the exhaust compares, how the transmission shifting under a little bit more moderate acceleration, and just generally how it feels. We're going to show the horsepower, boost, and torque here in our menu. All right, let's go. Let's give it some gas. Nothing too crazy. You notice a big difference in the interior with the exhaust sound. The exhaust in the Raptor is substantially louder inside the cabin. And I'm not sure how much of that is piped in through the speakers or if that is the actual exhaust, but it is a lot quieter inside of the Ram than the Raptor. All right, we're gonna get on it a little bit more this time. I'm not sure how well the exhaust picked up, but you can hear that really cool burble in between the shifts. The trade-off is the exhaust note. Personally, I prefer a little bit more on the Raptor, but under wide open throttle, they're very similar. I just think the Raptor is louder, but on just average acceleration, I think the Raptor exhaust sounds better, but you do give up that cool burble in the exhaust in between shifts. Hey, I want to give a special thanks to Bob Maxey in Howell, Michigan for letting me do that review for you guys on the 2025 Ford F-150 Raptor. If you guys are interested in this truck, I'm going to leave Josh W's, Wisniewski's information down below. He can help you out with any of these trucks I'm showing you here, as well as the 2025 Ford F-150 Raptor. These guys are getting really aggressive on pricing. They've been moving a lot of Super Duties, and I'm sure they're going to be trying to move some Raptors because they do a handful of those as well. Once again, I'll put that information down below. All right, so what's my takeaway after driving the 2025 Ram 1500 RHO versus the 2025 Raptor with the 3.5 high output back to back? Fuel economy, if we start right there, you get about a 2 mile per gallon improvement on our loop during today in the wintertime with the Raptor. We'll do this exact same thing in the summer. I'm curious to see if we notice anything different in the calibration. Performance, it's very interesting here. If you're looking for a bump in horsepower, this thing is really almost right between the Raptor and Raptor R. Being that the RHO is 500 pounds heavier than the Raptor, between these two trucks specifically, that's a lot of weight if you really think about it. So it's kind of wild that this truck is as quick as it is, considering it's only 90 horsepower more. They both take a little bit different approach to how they drive, the technology, the interior, the performance, the shocks. If you're looking for a truck that is a street performance truck, if you like that little sportier feeling suspension, less wallow, I would probably give the nod to the RHO. I think that's got a really nice feeling. I like how it is more around the corners. You don't get as much brake dive. I love how smooth the powertrain is. It is just, it's unreal how smooth it is, and it's just got big power at the top. If you're looking for a more supple ride, I think the Raptor's got a little softer suspension, small bump compliance going on the road. The seats are a little softer, the steering wheel's a little softer. When we compare exhaust note, I think under normal acceleration, I actually prefer the sound of the Raptor more than the RHO. At the wide open throttle scenarios or close to it, the difference in exhaust sound gets a lot closer. They sound much closer to each other. Then there's little trade-offs. The burble in between the shifts on the RHO, where that is just a consistent, just screamer. Transmissions, 8-speed versus 10-speed. I think this 10-speed helps this thing get a little better fuel economy, and I think it gives it a little bit lower RPM on the highway. But the 8-speed in the RHO, man, this thing is buttery smooth. For a smoothness perspective, I'd give the nod to the RHO. Interior bouginess, I'll call it. I would have to go a little bit to the RHO on this one. I think it just has a little bit more attention to detail, and just the fit and finish is really nice. And it's not a dig against the Raptor, because the Raptor is a really nice truck, and the Gen 3 is substantially nicer inside than the Gen 2. But Ram has just been crushing it in the interior for a while now, and they continued on this. I also, another nod, I like the hands-free driving, I like the massaging seats, and I like the technology performance pages in the RHO. But it's hard to deny, the Raptor has been the king for a long time, and it's a great truck. I've had a bunch of these, and I've been really happy with them, and for the most part, they've been pretty reliable. They're really great off-road, they tow pretty well. It's gonna be fun now comparing this to the RHO. We're gonna have a towing video here coming soon. I've towed almost 10,000 miles with Gen 3 Raptors, including Raptor Rs, anywhere between 3,000 pound to 8,000 pound trailers. So it'll be interesting to see how this 3-liter high output Hurricane, as well as this little bit more stiffer suspension is on this truck versus the Raptor. I'll be curious to see how it is for performance and fuel economy, which we'll get into. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed this video between the 25 F-150 Raptor and the 25 Ram 1500 RHO. More fun stuff to come. Thanks for watching.